What is up, everyone, and welcome to Ask MandR, episode 348. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the potential for LEGO Star Wars Tales of the Underworld sets, my case against more $1,000 LEGO sets following the release of the $1,000 Death Star this fall, at least for now, the potential for what I claim to be the best 2025 LEGO Star Wars rumor to be wrong, yeah, that would suck, and much more. If you have a question or topic you want answered on next week's episode, please drop in the comment section down below, hit the like button while you're there, and let's get into it. Let me get this paper out away with our first question from Grievous the Boss, who says, and how about that rumor that we're not going to get the UTAT? So this one has been picking up some traction. I've seen more and more people talking about it, and the more I see people talk about it, the more it scares me, because I'm not seeing anyone come to the rescue to say, oh no, it's definitely a UTAT. None of the super reliable sources out there are coming in screaming like, yeah, no, it is a UTAT. But essentially what I've seen over the past week or so is that some different sources have been claiming that the UTAT is literally just not going to be a UTAT. And this mainly goes back to a Clay Brick on Instagram as like the first account, biggest account that I've seen claiming this, but it's still supposed to have Bakara and Galactic Marines, and I guess Ki-Adi-Mundi is also supposed to be in this set. And I just don't believe it. I can't believe that LEGO would make a set that we know is going to have Galactic Marines, that we know is going to have Commander Bakara, and very likely will have Ki-Adi-Mundi, and have that set not be a UTAT. To me, there's no world where that makes sense. And now I'm going to explain a world where that makes sense. If they made the bridge as the set for Commander Bakara with Galactic Marines and Ki-Adi-Mundi, but why would you do the bridge when the UTAT is sitting right there as something that people like actually want? The bridge could conceivably be a cool set. They made a cool Spider-Man bridge back in like 2015 that I can remember. Yeah, they could do a bridge. I would be okay with a bridge. But what's the bridge without the UTAT on it? Maybe if you made the bridge with the UTAT and you could get both sets, that makes sense, but that's doing too much. I think it still has to be a UTAT, but I'm a little bit concerned. If it's not a UTAT, frankly, I'm just going to crash out. I've been waiting for Galactic Marines for so long. Like, I have Sharpie versions that I made in 2010, I think. This has been a long time coming. It's kind of the boat that I'm in right now, and until I see any, real evidence of anything that says it's really not a UTAT, outside of just people saying that it is or it isn't, I'm going to stick with it hopefully being UTAT because, come on, they're not doing the bridge, right? Then again, this is all brought to you by the same company that put their stamp of approval to throw shock troopers in the Megiddo Order 66 scene instead of Galactic Marines. So, yeah, it's a crapshoot. Jiller Pro says, ask MandR, what are your thoughts on the new Jango and Boba being sold early by people on eBay and whatnot? And so if you search up the new Jango Slave 1 set number on eBay, you will find the listing for the new Jango Fett. Couldn't find the Boba Fett, but the new Jango Fett is on there for $198, which is crazy considering the set is only going to be $300. Only going to be $300 in a month from now, though. So you're paying 2/3 the price for only the one figure. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me why someone would buy that. But if you go to the sold listings, someone did buy one. And so I would love to talk to the person that did buy it. I don't know why they would buy it. The way obviously we can all look at that and think it's stupid and preposterous, but at the same time, if someone wants to spend their money that way, it doesn't affect me. I don't care, really. Anyway, I'm pretty sure your question is angling more at what I think of the seller in this situation. And so first off, pricing wise, I don't care how much someone asks for something. $200 is a ridiculous price, but I can't spend more time on that. But what I do find questionable really is we know the figure's probably stolen, right? It's kind of an open secret in the LEGO community at this point that a bunch of figures get stolen from the Mexico factory and get sold into the world, and LEGO profits from this. Well, I shouldn't say that necessarily because they lose money when people steal the product. But when people sell these same items on Bricklink, LEGO is making a little bit of money from it. So I guess it's technically not all a lost cause, but I think there's a few different ways to view this. Number one, it's all wrong, morally reprehensible, and realistically, I'm in that boat. You shouldn't steal things and you shouldn't sell and buy things are stolen. That would be my line in the sand, probably morally myself. At the same time, because I'm so jaded with the LEGO company, it's been 10 years. LEGO has been allowing this to happen pretty much, in my opinion. You've just allowed all these people to steal figures from your factory, seemingly with no consequences, at least that I've seen. They've made no announcements of hey, we've solved this problem. They've also put out no kind of statement to the community to be hey guys, can you help us out here? This is a big problem for us. We would love for it to be solved. Can we stop like dealing with this. You know what I mean? Like they've seemed to not do any of that, but then again, maybe they don't want to put more eyeballs on it because like, you know, we're a generally niche group of people here. If the public at large, if my mom knew that Lego figures were being stolen from the factory, maybe that's different to Lego than like all of us knowing, you know? And then the third way to think about this is that it is reducing the price of these minifigs on the secondary market, which is good and bad depending on who you are. Because if you're just a guy out there that wants to buy a Jango Fett figure from the UCS Jango Slave 1 as cheap as possible, and it's going to be, let's say, exclusive to that set forever, at least that version with arm printing, let's just say that's going to be the case, right? The more of them in the market, the lower the price. Supply and demand, that's simple. So therefore, it's a good thing for you because you're going to save some money. As long as you can put the ethics of it aside to have your Jango Fett figure on your shelf, like, you don't care, right? And then there's like a variation of that line of thinking that I have, that if you're a pure Lego buyer out there and you just buy UCS sets for the set, for the build, you don't care about those figures, those stupid little bonuses that they include, who even cares? So you want to go and sell that figure, of course, and it would make sense that you would want the maximum value for anything that you sell ever. Like, why would you ever want less? That doesn't make sense. Well, it does really suck that you as a paying customer that went out and bought this thing are now getting half the value that you could have for the thing that you legitimately purchased because a bunch of people are out there buying and selling stolen goods. So there's a ton of different ways to think about it. I think at the end of the day, I just go back to my first line of thinking where it's like, yeah, it's probably wrong and bad and we shouldn't do it or engage in it as a community. But at the same time, it's been 10 years, Lego. You haven't said anything, and clearly you're just letting it happen, in my opinion. So, like, I don't know. Collector Clutch says, do you think that the next Count Dooku will be made when Lord of the Rings makes Saruman again, like they did in 2013, by sharing the head? And that makes a ton of sense. And it's kind of interesting, because back in 2013, they were much more open to using, like, unique character heads that were more accurate. Like Padme, for example, in 2013, had an accurate Padme head with, like, her little dimple thing or whatever, versus nowadays, they just give her the Jyn Erso head and say, good enough, right? That's basically Lego's new motto. Obviously, Count Dooku is a different case, but that Padme thing shows you that that really matters to Lego now. They're really penny pinching wherever they can to save literally a penny, probably, to not make a Padme unique, accurate face that everyone would like a little bit more. So Count Dooku being made when Saruman is made again, or vice versa, of course, Saruman made when Count Dooku is good, but they'll probably just be like same year figures. Makes a lot of sense, and that's not something I had considered. I'm not a big enough Lord of the Rings fan to know what set would include Saruman, so if someone can comment below and help me out, like what next year's Lord of the Rings D2C might be that would have that figure, because next year be a good year. Any year be a good year for Count Dooku at this point, I think. Razor Mango says, spend money in May for new sets and promo, or save for the new Death Star. And let's say I had $1,000 spent on Lego for the entire year of 2025. Frankly, I wouldn't only buy the Death Star. I would go for the multitude of sets that you could get with that money otherwise. I'd probably get Jango Slave 1, let's say the UT-AT is real, the Clone Wars MTT, and a spattering of other sets, versus just having one set in the Death Star. Look, if you love the Death Star, go for it, but I think most people's choice, and what I would recommend, is to go for a bunch of sets instead of just the one set in October. Richard Hilborn says, have you heard of these quote-unquote white hat leakers? Apparently they're people who used to leak unreleased info on Lego sets, and now Lego is using them to go after people who are leaking. What are your thoughts on this? And so I looked up this term, white hat leak Lego or whatever, and I was able to find an article posted on April 1st by the Brick Fan, which obviously raises an eyebrow because it could have been an April Fool's joke, but it says that it's been revealed that Lego is working with white hat leakers to identify vulnerabilities to prevent leaks of upcoming products. It continues on to basically claim that they stopped the leak of Pokemon beforehand, which is interesting because I had heard Lego Pokemon was happening like 3 months ago at least. As you may have picked up, I'm not the biggest Pokemon fan though, so I just did not care. But obviously that information didn't become public, so that's a bit different. But yeah, interesting. I almost think it's true, even though it was posted on April 1st. This would make a lot of sense for Lego to be doing. I do wonder like what they offer in return for that, and I think that would be very interesting to know, if this is of course true. WA Brick Collector says, with Lego making a $1,000 Star Wars sets, does this open the door for $1,000 sets in the future for Star Wars and other themes? And so I see people use, does it open the door a lot recently? And like, the door is always open to anything. Like, Lego can make more $1,000 sets next year, they could not, but I wanted to give you a better, like more well-researched answer. So I looked at the last last 20 years of the most expensive LEGO set of every year. I did remove a couple of the anomalies in the LEGO education line. Those don't really count here. So I've got it broken down by year, release price, and then adjusted for inflation in 2025 price. And just looking at the release price, what you'll see is that it usually takes a long time for LEGO, when they hit a new high price, to actually come back to that. So 2005, we had the $300 Death Star 2. We actually very quickly saw that surpassed in 2007 with the $500 UCS Millennium Falcon. But after that, we did not see another $500 plus LEGO set until 2016. So 9 years. $500, I would argue, was a pretty big mark to hit at the time. Now, of course, times were different back then. We were heading at oh, wow, look, we're kind of heading into a recession right now. It's actually crazy. Maybe, hopefully not. But anyway, but certainly LEGO was not as popular as it is today, and that Falcon set did not sell very well by all accounts. Like, I think they literally resorted to selling it for half price at some point, so they should get the point across. So like I said, 9-year gap between $500 sets between the first one and the second one, and then following that in 2017, we got our first $800 set in the UCS Millennium Falcon. Now, interestingly, adjusted for inflation, that Falcon in today's money from its release price, $1,040. So it was effectively the first $1,000 set in reference to today's money. Now, following that first $800 set, we didn't see another one for 4 more years until 2021 when the UCS AT-AT dropped. And then finally, this year in 2025, we're going to be getting another more expensive set, another 4 years later. So from the history of it, obviously the history is not indicative of exactly what the future will be, but historically, LEGO usually doesn't immediately go, here's a really big high price point for the first time, and then come right back to it the next year or the year after. There's usually quite a bit of breathing room there, and there's a few different reasons that could be. It could just be by happenstance. It could be that they are putting that set out there at the $500, the $800, whatever it may be, now the $1,000, and they want to see how that goes, basically. Like, let's give it a couple years. Does it sell very good for 2 years? Okay, now let's assess what we can do for some other things at that same price point. Or, of course, there just frankly aren't that many things that you would do at your highest extreme of a price point anyway, and so therefore it is inherently going to be rare that they do reach their highest price point very often. And so I think that that most expensive set by year chart, I wanted to make it into a graph, but I didn't really feel like it. You can see the point just looking at the numbers there. They will, of course, make more $1,000 LEGO sets in the future. It was always going to happen with inflation at some point or another. But I do think whether the Death Star is a hit or not will affect how soon and how often that happens, because you can see when the Falcon wasn't a hit in 2007, they didn't come back to that $500 price point for a long time. Hopefully you now have some pretty good historical context on what this $1,000 LEGO set really means for LEGO, which isn't a ton in the next few years, probably. Mystical Matt says, what do you think the odds of us getting sets from the new Tales of the Underworld short series are? And I would say very, very low. The last couple of short animated series that they did for Disney Plus, I don't think we got anything. Now, I do think it means something that Ventress is rumored to be in the V19 torrent this summer, and Ventress seemingly is one of the main characters of this new short series. I'm imagining that Disney came to LEGO and they're like, hey, you should just have Ventress in a set. And they didn't want her to be the version from the show, but they're just like, put Ventress in something. So I would imagine that's kind of the closest we'll get there. Because if they were going to release something from this, it should be releasing on May 1st with the show releasing May 4th. You know what I mean? We already know nothing's coming in the summer from it. What are they going to do? Release something in January of next year for a short miniseries that came out 7 months ago at that point? I just don't think that makes a ton of sense, but they should totally next time be doing a set on May 1st for these miniseries and maybe make it something that's only available for 7 months. Official Texan says, what if next year's May 4th UCS set was Obi-Wan's Delta 7 Starfighter as a pairing with Jango's UCS? Boy, that would be cool. So I plan on building and reviewing this one soon, but I am afraid that all the dark red is going to crack. This could definitely be next year's May 4th UCS set. I still think it's far more likely we're going to end up with a Mando's N1 Starfighter next year. I also it's kind of crazy, but I don't know. I could live without a pairing set for the Jango Slave 1. I do think if you want to put a little conspiracy theory behind it, the last couple years UCS sets were the TIE Interceptor and the X-Wing, and so, Jango Slave 1 and the Obi-Wan's Delta 7 back-to-back following that would make sense too. Charlie says, is there a specific reason you kept number 34 for your 501st case? First off, thank you to everyone who picked one up during its launch last week, and I already saw some people getting there, so that was exciting. First off, I don't want to keep number 1, because you know, I think it's fun that number 1 is out there and someone could get number 1. I think that's just like a cool thing. I also would love to keep 501, but same line of thinking. It feels wrong if I were to take the best number. Now, I could also do what LEGO does and just make sample and it doesn't matter and I don't have a numbered one or whatever. But I also like the idea of, like, I say there's 501, there's 501. So that obviously leads me to taking a different number. And whenever I have that opportunity, I take 34 because it was the original number at the end of my YouTube channel name. So it wasn't always MandR Productions. It was originally MandR Productions 34 because back in the day when I made my channel, you couldn't have like the same YouTube channel names. It was just done a bit differently. And so someone else already had MandR Productions for something else, who knows what. But I just wanted the name. So I was like, all right, MandR Productions, and then 34 because I was a big fan of Paul Pierce and David Ortiz. Obviously still am. Now, I'll wrap this up with a couple of comments about the leaked LEGO Plo Koon Microfighter. Revan says, I disagree with your reasoning for the lack of Plo Koon Starfighter. If you didn't listen to last week's episode, listen to that for that reasoning. But he says, I mean, they just released 12 F1 cars. I do hope it will come next year. And that is a really good counter argument. They did release 12 F1 cars. Why can't they have 3 Jedi Starfighters on the shelves at the same time? That's a very fair counter argument there. And then John says, do you believe that the situation with the Plo Koon Microfighter and Astromech head will be the same like in 2013, 2014 with the Microfighter X-Wing, meaning we'll get the body in the advent calendar as part of the droid snowman sort of droid maybe? I had not given this any consideration, but that is a really good like piece of LEGO Star Wars history to have on the top of your mind there. And it seems like that would be very sensible. I would imagine that they've gone through that line of thinking and hopefully came to the conclusion that that is what they should be doing here. Now, more realistically, the body should be included with the head in the set, even though the body doesn't actually fit in the set. Like, for the price at $15, why is it not included? So if that ends up being the case, and just from the picture it is the case because the body is not shown in the picture, so that's it, there's no body there. Hopefully at the very least it will be included in the advent calendar. But isn't it crazy you gotta buy a $45 DLC to your $13 or $15 set to have the complete thing, right? Kind of funny because people last week were like, oh, but it's good because you only have to pay $15 for Plo Koon. All right, well, now you have to pay $60 to get Plo Koon with his Astromech droid. Great. Now I need everyone together in the comments with their prayer circles for the UTAT, because if the rumor about the rumor not being true is true, oh boy, that is going to suck. It's got to be a UTAT, right? The last 3 months, I've just been so excited about this UTAT rumor, even though I know Bakar and the Galactic Marines are going to have wastegapes and that's going to suck and I'm going to complain about it and then people are going to be upset that I complain about it because that's how it goes. But LEGO's going to make us inferior product as far as the figures go. But if the set is also bad or not like a UTAT and it's just like a turbo tank with Galactic Marines, I'm going to crash out. I'm just going to crash out. That's all that's going to happen. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed, hit the like button. If you have a question or topic for the next episode, drop in the comments section down below. Subscribe if you're new here and for some reason watch this video to the end. And we'll see you next week when hopefully more info on a UTAT or no UTAT comes out.